Number 6. To understand Night of the Doctor, you have to travel back in time and bring in some context. It's November 2013. Moffat has been saying for months that he isn't planning on bringing any classic Doctors back for the anniversary season. He thinks it would confuse some of the fan base and would be off-kilter. And we are left in the dark, thinking that this really is going to be something made by a man who doesn't get the fans. And then, we get a prequel story.
I'm a doctor, but probably not the one you're expecting.
There was no leaked info about this one. No cast sheet put out a month ahead of time. No accidental mention of the story at a con. Hell, Paul even said up to this point that he was upset to not be included in the celebrations. When the episode was posted, the thumbnail didn't have Paul, the description didn't have Paul, the title didn't have Paul, so here I am, trying to get ready for school, watching this while I put my pants on, and there's Paul McGann, and now I'm gonna be late because I'm not waiting 9 hours to finish this. They played us for fools, and thank God it worked, because this was the best surprise of the year. And it totally showed that Moffat got what we wanted as fans. He closed the loop, from 8 to 9 all the way through. And it showed off just how amazing Paul McGann is as an actor, to the point that I can honestly say that it makes me more sad that I can't go watch more seasons of the show with him. The Paul McGann era, 1996 to 2013. Number 5. Strangely high on my personal list of things that I was looking forward to amongst all the fanfare was the Who Doodle, which I knew was going to be forthcoming. Fans kept designing and expecting some little drawing of Tennant sitting on the letters or the letters written out in Gallifreyan, but I knew that we would get something much bigger. Having previously seen how they celebrated such figures as John Lennon, I had my hopes quite high. And Google did not let us down, eventually publishing the biggest, the most complex, and the most interactive doodle that has ever been made. Nicknamed by creators, the Who Doodle. Some people are going to scoff at me and say that it is silly for me to mark this on my list this high when it's just a dumb little flash game. Well, here's the thing. The Who Doodle is fun because it has this simple outlook, but it actually does take timing and thought. Sure, when you die, you just turn forwards one notch in your regeneration cycle, so technically you can't lose. But whenever I play, I try my best not to lose a single life, and I almost never do it. Plus, keep in mind that the context for Who Doodles is that they're usually very pretty interactive GIFs, so in its own context, it does stand out as something special. I find myself revisiting the Hoodle quite a lot. Every time I think about the game, I just want to go find it so I can relive it all once more. But the thing is, I can't really analyze it that much. It's just a simple game where you go and find all the letters in Google hidden across time and space. And it only takes a couple minutes to play. It's not an hour-long special, it's not a 2-hour audio, and all I can say is that I like it, and you should go check it out. Number 4. I suggested that Moffat was putting on a face of not caring about the classic series in order to make Night of the Doctor a bigger twist, but maybe he was doing it to make this mockumentary a little funnier. The 5-ish Doctors reboot is fun. It's an enjoyable little satire of the anniversary mentality and the struggles of classic series Doctors to remain relevant in a decade so fixated on young, attractive supermodel docs. 5-ish is an amazing spectacle of people across the community working together to make something awesome. The fact that they not only filmed linking segments to tie into the episode during the filming of Day of the Doctor, but they also filmed on the set of The freaking Hobbit is really just too cool to describe. And the whole thing is just stuffed with so many fun in-jokes and cameos that you could only possibly get if you were a longtime fan, down to the title, a spoof of the previous anniversary story, The 5 Doctors, which had included truly only 3 actual incarnations. Stuff like this just really makes me understand how much people behind the show really care about it more than we give them credit. Sure, the market for people who would want this kind of stuff is niche, but it's surely not one that they would try to ignore, and this was just enough to make some of us in the Who community quite content. Number 3. An Adventure in Space and Time is a docudrama that chronicles the original creation of the show in 1963. Doctor Who was created as a story piece to fill in the lines between the children's programming and the sports programming. The BBC felt that if they could fill that section of the schedule with content that both children and adults could find entertaining, that it would mean a possible end to this dip in the viewing figures. Adventure follows the point of view of Verity Lambert, the show's leading producer, as she hunts for legitimacy in the business as the first female producer to work for the BBC. When Lambert is given the opportunity to be the show's main producer, she jumps at it, but finds that she has quite a lot to work against from the get-go, as many people fail to take her seriously in any manner. But alongside the show's first director, they are able to work past all of that as they grapple together a talented cast of actors alongside some brilliant writing. Is Adventure in Space and Time accurate? Probably less than I've admitted in the past. It does feel like the movie wants you to think that these two members of the production team were the only ones who were involved in any way with this show, and honestly a lot of the character interactions kind of feel hokey in a movie sort of way that I doubt was really present when all of this stuff really happened. But as I've said before, it really is more about the emotions that surrounded these events, and the film does not falter in that aspect for a single millisecond. It's more important that I understand how it felt to reach those highs or those lows than to know about the creative process for designing the TARDIS set, or who thought of the idea to make the takeoff set with the keys. The film's writing is brilliantly structured in such a way that, with any other story you might call it confused, but in this narrative, it's the point. When Hartnell enters the story, he sort of becomes a secondary main character to Hussein and Lambert, and then suddenly Hussein is no longer in the story, and then Lambert too is gone. And in both cases, with very limited exits. Once they're done on the show, we never see them again. There's no 10 years later coffee shop reunion scene. Once they've exited the show, they've exited each other's lives, and thus the film itself. Suddenly the main characters that we've grown used to being around are just missing. And it helps us understand how Hartnell must have felt to see so many of his beloved teammates just walk away from the show so recklessly. It's the most tragic thing about the show, probably. It has to keep moving and marching along. No matter who it loses or who it is missing, it simply can't stop. And Hartnell learns this himself, as his health hazards become too much and he has to say goodbye to the thing that has consumed what it means to be himself. He's horrified by the fact that he has to leave, but he can take some pleasure in the fact that his legacy will last longer than he could even possibly imagine. Number 2. Revisiting the past is cool and all, but sometimes creating a future is much more important. When Doctor Who was resurrected in 2005, a fresh facet was added to it that redefined a whole lot of the show's major themes and ideas. That of the Time War, a battle which took place between when Doctor Who went off the air and when it came back. And this was a brilliant addition, giving the show that dark twist that allowed it to seem set apart from not only the competition, but itself. But it never really was gonna be a thing that could stay set in place for too long. Because while discussions of the Time War were great at giving the Doctor some sort of unique motivations and background, its main purpose was to wipe out a lot of cool ideas and planets from the universe, so that you had to be very careful when bringing those up again. And when those are ideas the show kinda has to bring back at least once a year, it makes things kinda feel repetitive, because there's only like 2 main storylines that you can do under those limitations. The Time War is an idea that would have worked for a show that was supposed to run for 5 or 6 years, with one singular cast. But Doctor Who is a show that is constantly changing and evolving to new audiences, and new faces, and new ideas. having the show be set in this one very thin corridor of limitations would never last. In June 2013, a trailer was leaked online showing exactly what we had in store for the big anniversary special that year. And what I mean by that is that the trailer was fan-made. Sort of obviously so, in hindsight. And was clearly constructed by a master of special effects. This looks like the kind of story that I would like to go and see in a theater one day. A big Doctor Who movie with an Avengers-sized budget and mind-blowing special effects. But this would have been a garbage 50th anniversary story. Day of the Doctor is most likely the most justified multi-Doctor story ever made. Because instead of being an epic fireworks show of big explosions that have nothing to do with the fact that there are 3 Doctors standing in one room, the story dedicates itself to being a character study. Most of the best scenes I say aren't dedicated to the Doctor being clever or the 3 running around blowing stuff up, but rather to the 3 of them just disagreeing with certain moral issues and stances. And yes, the story takes the controversial step of retconning the end of the Time War, so instead of the Doctor committing mass genocide of billions of innocent people, he hides them away in a pocket reality so he might find them again one day. And yes, this changed things, but on the other hand, this changed things. Suddenly the Doctor has a new mindset, a new set of goals. For the first time in his life, he isn't running from something, he's running towards it. How he acts in the following seasons would be totally inconceivable if it wasn't for the Day of the Doctor. This is what I'm talking about when I describe a need for a story to feel special. This isn't something that would have come out a year beforehand or a year after. This is something unique and awesome and worth celebrating. It's everything I want it to be. It's fun, it's charming, it's exciting, it's intelligent, and it changed everything for the show and the fandom. Like it or not, this story is important, and it's not something that people are gonna forget anytime soon. And yet, it's not the best story on this list. And we'll talk about that one. But not quite yet.